The question is the classic question is depression anger turned inward? And I think that gets down to a real core issue. What we know, and I'm sure Andy will be able to comment further on this, what we know about that's unique or relatively unique about the human brain is the notion of a social brain. And in the social brain, you have, in humans, you have the ability to not just consider yourself, but kind of measure yourself, as well as others. There's this whole notion of theory of mind. You see someone who looks like they're suffering, and that suffering kind of replicates in your own brain, the core of empathy. That anger turned inwards, I think, is probably a shorthand for describing really the notion that of suffering, and suffering in a social context. I don't know that it necessarily means that you are angry at someone and then you turn that in. I think it means that when you're in a depressed state, you're very sad and self-critical. And those features of the brain that are related to that social brain network, I think Andy could probably talk about, but they're relatively unique in humans. This notion that we're separated by, depending on who you read, 1% to 3% of the DNA from chimpanzees is probably not a good characterization of modern molecular biology. And so we probably are much more distinct from our primate relatives than we ever thought. And this is in one way. So I like to kind of conceive of depression actually as being kind of the price we pay as a species for having a social network and a social brain. Empathy, the need to understand where you are in the relationship of others in your social group. So,
do you want to add to that, Andy?
Sure, yes. So we have a common neurobiological network for processing emotion, both positive and negative, and there's a lot of overlap. So you could argue from one negative emotion, anger turning into depression or fear, what have you. I think from a biological perspective, sure, that's entirely feasible.